Fran Brown said that Trebor Pena isn't worth $2 million, but Penn State and James Franklin think otherwise.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State and Syracuse football in today's crossover episode. My name is Seyko, and I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. He is Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse, and we're breaking down this move with Trebor Pena. We should have caught up sooner, but now that it's officially happened here and the domino effect, where does Syracuse stand? Where does Penn State stand? We're going to debate, is he worth that $2 million in NIL? Because Fran Brown doesn't think so, but Penn State does. Let's begin here, Jackson, with the fact that Syracuse is losing a key impact player. This is somebody that was going to be a captain this season, and Penn State is gaining a starter within the offense. I mean, from Penn State's side of it, I like this move because you get closer to a national title, but what exactly is Syracuse losing in Pena? Because he was really only a key contributor when Fran Brown and the new offensive system showed up.
And I think that's what a lot of Syracuse fans, including myself, will tell you, that Trebor Pena is an example of a late bloomer. He's dealt with a lot of injuries over his collegiate career, and even when he's been on the field, he has mostly been a special teams guy, which, by the way, that's another way where he can help Penn State is in special teams. And then there were whispers going into last season like, hey, keep an eye on Trebor Pena. He might have a pretty good year. And I was one of those guys who was like, he's been in college for a while. He hasn't really done anything. Why should I pay attention? Like, I'll believe it when I see it. And lo and behold, it was right off the bat. He has this awesome game in week 1 against Ohio, not Ohio State, just regular Ohio. But even then, I believed it right away. As soon as I saw him, his route running, he looked like a brand new wide receiver in that opening game. And lo and behold, he parlays that into 80 catches, 900 yards, second team all ACC. So even though he is a late bloomer and he didn't really thrive until he got into this offense, I still think this is a big loss for Syracuse football, because second team all ACC players, they don't grow on trees, do they? Like, can you just find them wherever? I mean, maybe they are so great at their scouting, and I would love for that to be true. But hey, we would have loved, I think, if Trebor Pena and Syracuse were able to work it out. It's just unfortunate that there was some sort of stalemate with the money, and now I think Penn State is getting a really good player.
Pena is going to be a starter. I can't sit here, and I've gone on the record and said this tons of times, Jackson. You and I actually agree on this. I don't think that Pena is a superstar. I think he is a serviceable starter and helps this offense get better. Both of those things can be true, because I do think that there's a misconception out there that you're going to get the same kind of production. Oh, he'll show up at Penn State. Penn State's a better offense. Drew Allar, so they should be able to replicate 80 catches, almost 1,000 yards. People have been asking me, Is he going to get 1,000 yards at Penn State? I think it's realistic to think that he'll get half of that. He'll get about 50 catches, 500 yards, and maybe 5 touchdowns. And I think that's honestly the peak almost, if everybody stays healthy. If he has to become more of a because he's not a focal point in this Penn State offense. He has to share reps and targets with Kyron Hudson from USC, Devontae Ross from Troy, in addition to a ground game that ran the football over 600 times last season, with those 2 NFL caliber running backs back in the fold, and Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Oh, and they can catch passes too. Now, Tyler Warren's not in the offense anymore, and he took up 85% of the passing offense there. But it's the fact that Penn State's going to be so balanced across the board with where the football goes through the aerial attack that I just don't want people to get disappointed when Pena is in reality the third passing option after Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross, and probably Luke Reynolds, the up-and-coming 5-star tight end who's taking over for Tyler Warren.
If you are a Penn State fan who looks at Pena's numbers and says, oh, That's what he's going to do for us. He's going to get 80 catches and 900 yards. I mean, sign me up for that, right? That's awesome. You will be disappointed. And that is not me saying that Trebor Pena is a bad player or that last year was an outlier or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's more of me saying, look at the situations. Trebor Pena last year was in a pass-happy offense. If you're a Penn State fan and you didn't watch a lot of Syracuse last year, I'll fill you in on Syracuse football, okay? They had Kyle McCord, who threw the ball over 590 times. 590.
That's the inverse of Penn State.
They threw the ball more than anyone in the country last year. And they were quite good at it too, by the way. They were very good at throwing the football. And so that's part of the reason why Trebor Pena's numbers look the way they look, because they threw the ball darn near 50 times a game. And at Penn State, they're not going to throw it 50 times a game. They're going to throw it half that. Like they're going to throw it 20, even though they have Drew Allar. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't necessarily get caught up in, oh, well, was Pena the only option at Syracuse? Actually, he was not. That is something that is encouraging. Mm-hmm. Trebor Pena was what I told you off camera. He was a guy at Syracuse. He was not the guy on Syracuse's offense. They had multiple guys. They had Pena. They had Jackson Meeks, who was all ACC. They had Aronde Gadsden, who was all conference and all American too. They had LaQuinn Allen out of the backfield, who caught passes a lot as well. All conference player. They had a lot of weapons last year. So that's something that is encouraging about Trebor Pena, that he did carve out a significant role despite multiple all-conference players around him. But he's going to Penn State where they're not going to pass as much. So I wouldn't get caught up too much in the numbers. I would look at it and say, I think we got a good player. I think we got a starting slot receiver. I think we got someone that is going to be money on third down, money within 10 yards. I think Pro Football Focus has the stat, Zach, where he caught 47 of 54 targets within 10 yards. That's incredible efficiency. Now, you might not get 54 targets within 10 yards, but if you can keep that efficiency, you're getting a really good player. So don't get too caught up in the numbers. Just be excited that you got a good player. You got someone that's going to be a reliable option on third down, and he's going to help Penn State's offense.
You know what, Jackson? We do have to get caught up in the numbers, because the question that now comes to mind after we just hashed all of that out, is he worth the alleged $2 million in NIL? Because somebody's spending it. It's not Syracuse. It's not Miami. It's allegedly, right, Penn State. They picked him up. So we're going to discuss that. Is Fran Brown justified in saying that Pena is not worth the Jeremiah Smith money? And is Penn State out of its mind for taking on that kind of financial investment for a complimentary player in the offense? That is coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. And today's show is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Do you need help with an order? Supply House offers support, expert support, and an industry-leading service, so you're always going to talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it is your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5. That's the letters SH and the number 5 for 5% off your first order over at supplyhouse.com. Still later on in this crossover episode, we're going to talk about where Penn State and Syracuse are respectively. Like I said, this gets them closer to a national title. And with what Fran Brown said, I do find it a little contradictory since there are linked to Jonte Cook at this point in time. So what's the holdup? We'll talk about that in the final segment. Back to Pena and his actual net worth, if you will. Look, college football is the wild, wild west. When we actually talk about it, Jackson, I don't think the $2 million in NIL is justified, but the market is the market. So just because I don't have that kind of money and we're sitting here playing a little bit of, college football general manager, Penn State said it was worth it. And from what I've heard, Penn State did make a serious offer, and that there was a counter offer after Miami of Florida became a heavy player in all of this. They wanted Trebor Pena, but Penn State wanted him that badly. So Syracuse might not think that Pena's worth it because they're not close to a national title. But Penn State is, and knows that a player like Pena can at least help them get there. So at the end of the day, it is worth it from the team and the objectives. But if we're talking like making up an NFL type of salary cap and how you're balancing the budget and everything, I don't know that it's justified, if that makes sense.
Look, Zach, you mentioned the NFL. The NFL, we can talk all day about player salaries and whether or not players are worth what they're being paid. And the reason why it's such an important talking point about the NFL, or really any other major American pro league besides baseball. So we're talking about the NFL, the NBA, the NHL is the most strict when it comes to the salary cap. There's a salary cap. So it does matter what our teams are willing to pay players, because if you pay too much for a player, well, that's going to hurt you with getting other players because you have a salary cap. This system does not have a salary cap. You have budgets, but when in doubt, there is always a path to being able to get more money. And I know Syracuse fans are probably going to turn off this show right now, but that is the reality. There's no salary cap here. So, look, is Trebor Pena worth $2 million if Jeremiah Smith is getting $2 million?
And he's not getting, let's just do some basic math. Yep. He might, in terms of Ohio State NIL, that might be a give or take rough estimate, but you don't even know how much Jeremiah Smith is making in money. It is making in terms of money hand over fist right now at Ohio State.
Right. But let's say hypothetically, what Fran Brown said, Jeremiah Smith getting $2 million over at Ohio State. Let's say that's true, right? I'm going to let people in on a little secret. If Jeremiah Smith is only getting paid $2 million in NIL, then nobody else in the country is worth $2 million. Yeah. That guy might be the best player in college football. That guy, I don't care what quarterback you have. If you have that guy on your team, he's probably more valuable than any quarterback. He's more valuable probably than Drew Allar. And Penn State fans are probably going to turn off the channel now, but I'm probably right on this. Jeremiah Smith is a monster. So if he's getting paid $2 million and that's it, nobody's worth it. I don't care what star player you have. They're not worth $2 million. The reality is the market has spoken. Multiple teams were willing to give Trebor Pena serious offers. He helps your team get better. So instead of getting caught up in, is he worth the money? Is he not worth the money? Just enjoy the player and hope that he does well with your team, because at the end of the day, Zach, there is no salary cap. So who cares if he's worth the money or not? There's no cap.
No cap. And the other thing that I want to point out about it is that it alienates a locker room to an extent. It maybe. I think it definitely does from Penn State's point of view. That was my concern. Maybe it doesn't. I imagine that James Franklin said, hey, do we want to bring this guy in? He probably talked to the team and said, this is going to help us get closer. And he's been very vocal about getting a linebacker as well. So there's two parts to this. One is that, yes, it can. If you're a wide receiver at Penn State, and let's just, speak in hypotheticals, that you're Devontae Ross or Kyron Hudson, and you're getting what, 400, 500K in NIL. I'm not saying that. Do not quote me that I'm not going on the record. I'm just wide receiver A gets 500K, wide receiver B gets 500K as well. And they were also transfer portal additions. But Trebor Pena comes in and he's making close to $2 million allegedly. that's going to at least cause some drama. Now it's Penn State's responsibility on how they manage that. The other point I want to bring up is that the market is inflated. So Pena, if he's working with an agency, somebody's smart in this instance, because Pena and his team knew that his market value was increased here because of the revenue sharing. Now schools can use their money out of their budget to pay athletes. So this is just from a year ago, what a wide receiver, any player was probably half. I think Trebor Pena's NIL value coming off of this season, but you're going into last year's NIL regulations, is probably give or take that 400, 500K. But it's doubled, tripled, essentially, maybe honestly, quadrupled in Pena's case because of that revenue sharing.
Well, the market just keeps going up on players, and I don't think it's really going to stop.
Because more money is available.
There's more money available, and the system is not going away. So, and again, I'm going to just keep on repeating myself here, but there is no salary cap with NIL. So you could just keep raising money here. You can just keep going because there actually will never be a salary cap against NIL, because that goes against every single law.
How can they do that? They're trying to do that. How can they do that?
You actually really can't, because Zach, the example that I can give you is like, all right, Zach, I'm the head of a cereal brand here, and I want to put your face on the cover of a cereal box. The United States government, they can't step in and say how much I am allowed to pay you to put your face on the cover of a cereal box.
Yeah.
Like, it's whatever the market is willing to pay. And you can agree or disagree to the terms, but that's what the market is allowed to say here. So you can just keep raising money. And I don't think this alienates the locker room at all, because Trebor Pena makes your team better. And he's making more money than you. Well, then that's unfortunate for you. You should have gotten a better agent. That's your problem. Like, why is it Trebor Pena's problem that the team was willing to pay him this amount?
You can't negotiate.
Negotiate a better deal next time. I don't know what to tell you. If you're only getting $500K, but you think you're better than Trebor Pena, well, there's a transfer portal next year. You can go float yourself out there and see what the market is willing to pay you then. I don't see how this could alienate the locker room. He helps your team get better. And in the end of the day, if you win the national championship or come close again, then it's worth it, right?
When you mentioned national championship, that's a perfect segue into our final segment, where Penn State stands, where Syracuse stands, because I do find it very interesting after what Fran Brown had said that they are targeting another top tier wide receiver that's available in the transfer portal in Jonte Cook. And what's the holdup? Is Syracuse even going to get him? How likely is it that Penn State wins a national title? Should they be the preseason number one? Jackson and I are going to debate all of that coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. Final segment, home stretch of this. Jackson, we can talk about both teams in the same breath here. Penn State, I think, has a case to be number one after adding Trebor Pena. Now, at the time of this recording, and things move so fast, if Penn State happens to add another quality linebacker, because that is what Penn State feels that it needs, especially after losing Tamir Robinson to USC, Penn State, if they can get those additions, do in fact have a case to be number one. Oh, well, what about Texas? What about Ohio State? They have a case. They are top three conservatively, but this is a national title contending team. And my argument for that number one spot and why they're a title contender is because Drew Allar is back. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen are back. You have three starting caliber wide receivers that are all going to contribute. Yeah, sure, you lose Tyler Warren, you lose Abdul Carter, but you have Luke Reynolds that's going to step up. Penn State's in a spot that other teams aren't. Syracuse is going to have a new starting quarterback, Steve Angeli. I want you to tell me about him too. Why that addition makes sense. But Drew Allar is back. Ohio State breaking in a new starting quarterback. Oregon breaking in a new starting quarterback. Texas technically breaking in a new starting quarterback, even though he had some spot starts here and there when Quinn Ewers wasn't available. Penn State has something else, something that most teams do not. Exception of LSU as far as title contenders go, and that is a returning veteran starting quarterback and a bulk of the offensive system returning as well.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said, that Penn State is definitely one of those teams that could very well win the national title this upcoming season. I didn't think they were going to win the national title last year, and I don't know when the last time I really felt that they had national title expectations. I think this is one of those years where they could really do it. Now, yes, you mentioned all the continuity. I think that's the best way to put it with Penn State, is that they have a lot of returning production coming back. That being said, Ohio State, new quarterback, Oregon, new quarterback. Well, if those guys fit in fine, then you know that they're going to be top teams no matter what. You know that Arch Manning's probably going to be pretty good over at Texas. And I know Giants fans are already thinking about tanking for the #1 pick to go get him, right?
After they just took a quarterback.
Trust me, they might do it anyway, okay?
Why not? Just for fun.
Why not? I mean, you just keep taking a quarterback, right? You know that the usual suspects in college football are going to be the usual suspects. And I expect that Penn State is going to be among the teams that could win the national title in this upcoming season. Syracuse, on the other hand, I mean, we still got a while to go. I like the direction that they are in, but I think anyone sitting here saying, they might be a national title contender this year. No, they're not yet. Fran Brown, he's got them in the right direction. Maybe in a few years, maybe you got to really start stacking recruiting classes over and over and over again if you're going to build a program like Syracuse all the way up to that national title status. That being said, I do like some of the additions that they have made. You mentioned Steve Angeli, the quarterback from Notre Dame. I'm not sure he's going to be the starter, because they also got Ricky Collins from LSU, and they're both very similar in terms of their career arcs. They're both former top high school guys, went to big programs, Steve Angeli, Notre Dame, Ricky Collins, LSU. Both couldn't really get on the field because, well, those programs have big-time quarterbacks as well. I mean, we could talk about LSU briefly here. You've ever heard of Jaden Daniels?
I think so.
Yeah.
So. He was in that championship game too, right? As a rookie.
Championship game. He may or may not have won, that award that's given to the best player in college football on an annual basis a couple of years ago. Yeah. So he was behind him. And then I don't know if you ever heard of Garrett Nussmeier, but he's pretty good. And he's coming back for LSU for another year. So yeah, Ricky Collins was never going to see the field over at LSU. It just happens. I mean, it's like Joe Burrow never saw the field at Ohio State for a reason. They just have guys, right? And then you got Steve Angeli in a similar boat. They're going to be in a quarterback battle. So we'll see what happens there, but I like those additions that they have made at quarterback. Hopefully they can replace Kyle McCord. And you mentioned Jonte Cook earlier. He was predicted to go to Syracuse on Sunday. At the time of this recording, which is Thursday morning, nothing has happened yet, but I'm still optimistic that that move will come to fruition.
Is Syracuse better than what it was a season ago? That's it, because you want to incrementally get better. Do they finish better than at this point? And things can change through camp and everything, but right now with what they have, what they're projected to have, are they better than last season? Because I say that about Penn State. I think they are better than what they had last season.
Syracuse fans who are still watching or listening are going to be upset, but no, they're not.
Oh,
they're not better. And that's not necessarily the worst thing to admit, because they were really good last year. They were a 9-3 regular season team that were very close to being Indiana. That's who they could have been. They were very, very close. I mean, they had a couple of losses in there that could have gone either way, and they could have been that 11-1 team that would have made the college football playoff very similar to Indiana. They sent 10 guys to the NFL, which, Zach, that's unheard of for Syracuse football.
Fran Brown's the guy. I like that hire.
They sent 10 guys to the National Football League. 4 of them got drafted. That's unheard of in Syracuse football. And you don't just replace that production overnight. You go from a second-team All-ACC quarterback in Kyle McCord, who broke almost every single conference record. Like he actually broke conference records, like good ones too, like passing yards, completions. Steve Angeli versus Ricky Collins. I mean, what are the odds that they are on level of Kyle McCord? You lose Aronde Gadsden. You lose Trebor Pena. You lose Jackson Meeks. On top of that, you have a tougher schedule this upcoming season.
It's very tough. I'm looking at it. This is awful. They might
be a tough schedule.
2-6 through 8 games.
So to sit here and say that, oh, are they better? I don't think they are better. And you combine that with the schedule they have coming up. I think a fair expectation for Syracuse this upcoming year is just make a bowl game. I think if you make a bowl game with that schedule, hopefully you get some decent quarterback play, and then you can load up for a really good 2026 season. That's where I have Syracuse right now.
The ACC is such a wild card. So if Syracuse catches fire, but starting with Tennessee and then Clemson in your first 4 games, yeah, there's certainly going to be a reality check for the Orange here. Wow, we were able to cover a lot here. Do you want to add something in real quick?
Well, their toughest games, I should also mention, are all on the road. That's another thing that makes the schedule so difficult. So you got Tennessee neutral site in Atlanta. That's not really going to be a neutral site, and you know it. At Clemson, at SMU, you're going to Georgia Tech, at Miami as well, at Notre Dame towards the end of the season. So last year, Syracuse's toughest games were at home. They got Miami at home. That was their toughest one. They beat them. Mm-hmm. They got them at home. Now they have all these games that are tough, and they're on the road. So it makes it a little bit more challenging.
If I had to make a prediction right now, I say under 500.
I don't blame you. I mean, I'm be optimistic.
Just the outsider perspective.
I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you at all. I think it's one of those scenarios where you can't look at Syracuse from a year ago and say, oh, well, they're going to be like 8-4, 9-3 again, right? Like, no, like completely different team, completely different schedule. Yeah, you have the same coaching staff for the most part, so that gives you hope. National outsider perspective, I can completely understand why you would say that they're going to go under 500. I'll be optimistic. I do think they will make at least a bowl game.
Outsider perspective, because I'll offer you the same chance. What do you think about Penn State? Better than 10-2, 11-1? Do they beat Ohio State? Did they beat Oregon? Do they get back to the Big Ten title?
I'm never going to believe they beat Ohio State until they actually beat Ohio State. How about that?
It's been 10 years.
Yeah. I'm not going to believe it until I see it. Okay, I've seen this movie a lot of times.
It's a terrible movie. I hate it.
It's an awful movie if you're a Penn State fan. They just can't beat them. Ever since that game where it was a kind of a...
And they needed a magical play for it to happen.
Yeah, I remember that one. I was younger, but I remember that game a little bit. I do think they have a chance. I wouldn't call them a lock for the college football playoff, but if they don't make the college football playoff, it is incredibly disappointing.
That's bad. I can't even fathom that right now.
You got to make the college. I think you have to make the college football playoff. If you don't make the college football playoff, that is a failure, complete failure. And then from then on, you really have to see how the season goes before you can really make a prediction like, oh, so are they really going to be one of those teams in the college football playoff that has a chance to win the national title? Or are they just there because there are now 12 spots? Which one is it? So we'll find out, but I have them at minimum in the college football playoff. And like I said earlier, outsider perspective, I do think that they are one of those teams in that early circle where you could see them winning the national title.
They should be favored against Oregon. They're closer to Ohio State than they were the past few years. So let people decide from there. That means 11-1 to me. And that gets you into the playoffs. So
10-2 probably gets them in as well.
We'll see. We'll see, right? Because there's going to be a lot of good 10-2 teams at the end of the day. And that's going to do it for us here on this Locked On crossover featuring Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Syracuse. If you are new to either of our shows, make sure you subscribe to them respectively on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check out the portal with host Brian Smith. He's got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. The portal is entirely devoted to high school recruiting and the transfer portal. Be the most informed fan out there with rapid changes in the college football landscape. You can find the portal on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Jackson, thanks so much for the time. I'm glad we could chop it up today in this crossover.
Thank you, Zach. It was awesome.